Right, I'm going to grab my tripod before it falls. Morning everybody, fantastic to see you all again. So as you can see, it is the middle of the day and I'm in the Lake District doing a little bit of a hike and a little bit of a recce to see what the heather's like. But I thought I'd do a video of it. I thought I'd see if I could shoot some great photos in the middle of the day, because I don't often shoot at this time of the day, and see what I could get. So got a bit of a hike and then we should have some great views. So we're quite lucky today because there's quite a lot of cloud in the sky, so it's creating like a lot of shadow, like the shadow that I've got at the moment in this tree here. And what I like to do on a day like this is you almost like have a big softbox with the cloud in the sky, and it creates sort of nice soft lighting, certainly for woodland shots. But as we go higher, then that lighting is going to change a little bit over the landscape as well, so we'll get like dappled lighting on the landscape. And or just at the time of year where everything looks super green, as you can see, everything's really growing fantastically well. We've had a lot of rain in the Lake District, so I'm really quite excited by it. I think we'll get something really good. Beautiful. So one of the things you've got to try and do in landscapes like this, especially when there's flat light, is try and use the layers that you've got in the landscape. So here you can see the ferns right at the beginning, the ferns in the midground, this wall, and then the lake, and then the clouds. So try and find objects that create those layers rather than using light to create that layer. And we might get lucky, we might get some dappled light, but using layers can really help your photography. So you can probably see just behind me now that the light's changing so quickly because it's quite windy. You probably hear the wind as well. Then the wind's just blowing the clouds and creating these great sort of dappled light on the land. And the key is to get a good composition when they just fall and help to make that composition. So when we get to the top, I'm going to be looking out for that a little bit more, looking out how we can use that dappled light. Right, I'm going to grab my tripod before it falls. So as well as trying to get the dappled light, what I'm trying to do is isolate something with the sun and the shadow. So I've got this tree here in the foreground and it creates a really good contrast to the background sort of shadowed mountain. And it's just a question of timing it right, really. I've got a 14 to 30mm lens on my Z7 and I've got it on f10 handhold because it's super bright, middle of the day. I don't really need to use a tripod, focusing on the mountain in the background, and there's nothing really super close to me, and it's just a question of just taking quite a few shots in different lights just to see which one works best. And I'm just caring about those edges as well because there's quite a lot going on in the scene, so I just want to make sure that I'm not missing anything, so I'm just looking at those edges.
Standing at your doorstep.
Okay, so as you can see from that little bit of a scouting trip, I did say at the beginning I was going to look for some heather. I knew there probably wasn't any heather up there, but I just wanted to check it out, and I was checking it out for a few other shoots that I've got in mind as well. But I got some reasonable shots in the middle of the day, so yeah, it was really pleasing. What I wanted to do is, actually when I got back and I thought about this in a little bit more detail, I looked through my sort of back catalogue to see how many shots I'd actually taken between the hours of sort of 10 AM and maybe 3-4 PM, depending on what time of year it is. But that sort of harsh light really, where you maybe as a photographer think maybe it's not the best time to go out and shoot. And I found that loads of my shots were taken between those two times and not at the golden hours of sunrise and sunset. So I thought I'd share with you some of the common themes that those shots had. And the first one is that dappled light that I was talking about so much in the video. The dappled light's so important. That this was a shot actually towards the end of the day, but it was still it was in the summer, and it was still probably 5 hours before sunset. And you can see that just having light on just a little bit of the landscape just transforms it by having that dappled light. Again, with this shot here, this was later in the year, but it was shot at 11 AM. So you can see that, again, with some clouds and a bit of sunlight, you can create some amazing landscapes. And then finally this one here, which is a shot that didn't really work because I was actually waiting for some light on the hut, but it still sort of tells a story. Again, it was a little bit later, it's probably around about 4:30 PM, but it was nowhere near the golden hour. So you can see that dappled light really creates a difference. I also wanted to talk a little bit about foreground and how that can help when you're shooting in sort of midday, harsh sunlight. So this shot here, although it looks like, you know, it's probably shot in the morning, and I've got a print of it here. So this shot, one of my favourite from Scotland, was actually taken about 11 AM, and you know we still had reasonably low light, I suppose, but it was way outside sunrise, and you can see by focusing on the foreground here, then you know I've created something a little bit special. So it's often a good idea to do that and focus on the foreground when you're shooting in maybe harsher conditions. You've got to be a little bit careful with shadows, but you can see you can use shadows to your advantage, like this one, which was also from Helm Crag. This was shot on a different trip, but you can see that I've used the foreground here to accentuate this amazing rock textures, and then got those repeating rocks going through into the background. So speaking about shadows, I think shadows are your friend when you're shooting in harsher light, and you can use them to your advantage. So take this shot in Zion Canyon. The light was on these trees, but the canyon wall was in shadow, so it really create emphasis. And I spoke about it in this video in a little bit more detail on light. So go and take a look at it. And again, this was shot midday, 12:05 to be exact, and it just shows just how important using silhouette shadows are on the landscape. You know, some of the landscape was in shadows, some of it was in sunlight, and it created a very dramatic effect. You know, it's not taken at golden hours, but it's really created something very special, and it became the cover shot for my art of photography series. Link in the description below. Quick plug. Again, here you can see that the trees in sun and the rest of the mountains in sun, but where the tree is in shadow, so I've created that contrast, and that really works. And quite often, using shadow is a bit like the dappled light. It's all about timing, and if you can get that timing right, then that can be really powerful. So for instance, this shot in the Faroe Islands, again, was taken, I think, about 1 PM. I'm putting the times up for where all these were taken, but you can see that, you know, I've just got light on the mountain here. All this is in shadow, and then Laurie, who I was with here, is just on the mountain peak here, and the light is just coming down into this fjord, and it makes such a fantastic shot. Timing's so important. You know, if you look back at that shot that I took of the tree just at the end of this video that I showed you on Helm Crag, I was waiting to get the right shot for that tree, and you saw at the end of the video that some of them were in shade and some of them were in light. I've got another example of that as well. Here you can see a tree that I was trying to take and where it's in shade, and here you can see the tree in sunlight, and it makes such a big difference to the shot. You know, it really emphasizes that tree. And quite often getting that timing right when it's sort of midday and just waiting for the clouds to come over or for a shadow to get to a particular point, or just thinking about where those shadows are in your shot can really make a difference and really help you to be able to shoot throughout the day, which you really want to be able to do. You don't want to have to just go out at sunrise or sunset times. And I find in the summer, it becomes tiresome if you just have to get up at 2 a.m. every night, or you're going out at 10 p.m. for sunset. So you need to be able to mix it up with different times of day and use that light to your advantage, because there's always a good shot to be had. Anyway, I just want to say thanks for anybody that watched the midweek video I published on Thursday about storage and your photos. I hope that was useful. That was episode 1 of my Photographer's Toolkit series. I'd massively appreciate it if you share it, give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't seen it, then go and have a look at it. I'll put a link in the description, and hopefully a link will come up here as well. And I probably won't have a midweek one out next week, but the week after I will, and I'll be talking about another bit of photography kit, probably something to do with the camera this time. I've got a few ideas around that. I've also just announced a new workshop in Lofoten, where I was in the summer. I'm going back in the winter. It was an amazing workshop. The last one that I just announced, the Pharaoh's workshop, sold out in around about 14 hours. So if you want to get on the Lofoten one, then check out the link in the description below and you can sign up. I think it's going to be spectacular. Lofoten in the winter is stunning, so we're going to have a fantastic time. Anyway, that's it for this week's video. I hope you've enjoyed it. Next week I'm going to be talking about the heather and shooting the heather in the Peak District, which is so amazing. I've done some photography and some bits of this video already. I'm really excited about it. So make sure you check out next Sunday's video. And thanks ever so much for watching. And until next Sunday, bye.